Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes him pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's facts. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best. I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Last Round Podcast after probably one of the most, if not the most significant fight weekends, at least in terms of buzz, to start off the beginning of this year so far. And then 2 weeks later, obviously, in about 2 weeks or so, we have Canelo and Munguia, which is another big fight. But coming off the Ryan Garcia crazy victory over Devin the Dream Haney. And also we have an upcoming... So we had a Golden Boy event this past weekend. We have another one this upcoming weekend. And I guess who better to come on than somebody who's been familiar with a lot of these fighters involved in this promotion since they were kids, especially, and who was obviously high up in the echelon at Golden Boy Promotions at one time. He returns here on the Last Round Podcast. Roberto Diaz, excuse me, returns to the Last Round Podcast. Thank you for joining us, Roberto.
No, thank you guys for having me. And no worries. Hey, to be confused with one of the top trainers in the world, I take that. No,
hey, how many times has that happened to you? Tell us.
A lot. It happens a lot. Either they confuse me with Robert Garcia or Richard Schaefer. So it happens a lot of times. I'm like, okay. No problem.
I don't feel too bad then, man. I don't feel too bad. I'm cool. So we appreciate you coming back on, Roberto, obviously. Like we just mentioned, Ryan Garcia got the majority decision win over Devin Haney this past Saturday in Brooklyn, New York by scores of 115-109, 114-110. And then one judge had it a draw, 112-112. So before we get your reaction to the actual outcome of the fight, what was your take on the promotion, I guess, if you want to call it that, which, kind of read between the lines, was breaking the fourth wall here, of the promotion of the fight, of the event, of Ryan's behavior, how was your, take on that whole situation?
So a few weeks after the fight got announced and, as a spectator, now as a fan, and somebody that knows Ryan from early on, I signed him to Golden Boy and did the majority of his fights. I labeled it as a genius, that, wow, whatever he's doing in very different way from me. I'm so old school, the boxing way. I said, but he is a genius in the social media and he gets it. I said, a couple podcasts and interviews, they asked me and I said, look, regardless of what he's doing, he's engaging because every time he posts something, there was thousands of comments. So I said, everybody's talking about it. So I think, look, he's doing something, a modern day. We may not all agree, but I think it's working. As it got closer towards the fight, and I saw a total different Ryan than who I know or who I thought I knew, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is promotion anymore. I think there's something, something's not there. And then obviously a little concerned on the fight and knowing how tough and difficult the fight could be. You have to give, obviously, the logic, which doesn't exist in boxing, the logic is Devin had the momentum. Devin had fought in Australia twice. Devin had gone through fires with Lomachenko. Whether we thought Lomachenko won or Devin won, he matched very closely to make it that close of a fight with one of the highest IQs in boxing. He got hurt by Linares, but was able to weather the storm. In his mind, Devin knew and had confidence in himself, rightfully so. More active. Ryan wasn't that, so you had to favor. So I tuned in, saying, okay, hope for the best and not expect it. Wow, I was shocked. He fooled. I could say, yeah, he fooled you all. No, he fooled us all because that Art of War, he definitely took a page out of the book and made it seem that he wasn't 100%. And maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was 80%. But that just shows, wait a minute. Imagine what you could do at 100. I mean, to drop Devin 3 times and have him out on his feet a couple times, got to give it to Devin as well. Show the heart of a champion, got up, kept getting up, try to fight on, finish the fight on his feet. He should be proud. But wow, all I can say is wow, he wowed me. He really did, because you stepped up to a level that you could say hadn't been there before, because it's almost like you went from C-level type opponents, take out the Gervonta Davis, or a B- type opponent, to an A plus even. Devin's undefeated. He had beaten everybody. He's won championships in 2 divisions, and to go on and put that type of performance, again, he didn't fool everybody. He fooled us all, the majority of us, because I'm including myself.
Robert, tell us when you first, heard about or saw Ryan, and tell us the journey to get him signed to Golden Boy.
His manager at the time, Roger Ruiz, reached out to me. She sent me a couple videos, couple links. He had like 6 or 7 fights, majority in Tijuana. Again, you don't really, at that stage, that early on, you don't really look at, okay, who has he beaten? You do that more when they have 15 or 18 fights and, okay, 18-0, but who have you beaten? All of them by knockout in the first round. All right. You try to find some names on that resume. With Ryan, there wasn't no names on the resume because he was a baby still. But you did see, and obviously he had the amateur backing right there, multiple-time national champion, over 200 wins. That in itself is very impressive. But the physique, that look, and where a lot of times managers, trainers, fathers, mothers would call me and say, I have the next Chavez, I have the next Tyson, I have the next De La Hoya. Roger didn't say that. I said it. I'm like, oh, shit, this kid reminds me of Oscar De La Hoya. Thin frame, good-looking kid, could fight outside of having one of the big, the big one, the gold medal. This kid has that, and he's in that weight class. So it was a no-brainer to sign him. You saw that there was something. First couple fights, you saw, boom, blazing knockouts, put him on it was a night before Canelo Triple G, I think the first fight on an ESPN headline, main event, knocks the kid out in the first round, spectacular fashion. And then as you saw the progress in stepping up in fight, doing a little of the same, knocked out a Wonder Boy from Puerto Rico, a kid that was very highly touted coming out of the amateurs. Everybody wanted to sign him, and knocked him out in a couple rounds. So you see it. And of course you would see some fights where, okay, needs to work on this, needs to work on that. But every time, and that's where I have said that Ryan is a sponge, he'll absorb, and he's eager to learn and pick up. Because if you saw his first fight with Eddie Reynoso against a Dominican kid on the Canelo fielding undercard, he wasn't pulling back anymore. Just first fight, he would put his hand to put some distance instead of pulling back. And that right there, I saw it in the first round. I was really proud. I was really like, wow, he's picked this up. And they didn't even have a full camp. I think with Canelo, with Eddie Reynoso, that fight, he had been maybe a month or a month and a half for that fight. So, again, this is a kid that learns quick. A lot label him, oh, he's social media this, social media that. That takes more effort, because on top of whatever you're doing in the gym, you got to go in and put in those hours to grow that fast and that well in the social media aspect. So there was always the mentality that this kid could be a superstar. Always. I think the bad of boxing and the beauty of boxing is it takes one fight for people to write you off, or one fight for people to jump on the bandwagon. And after Saturday's performance, I think people are now, seeing what the true potential of Ryan Garcia is.
Do you pull him in, Robert? Interview him? Have you ever had any interviews where straight after the interview you thought, you know what, I'm not signing this guy?
Absolutely, it happens. I won't even say names. A kid that actually made it to a world champion. but sometimes it's not the fighter itself. You sit down, you go through, okay, why do you want to be a fighter? Or what's your accolades? What are your expectations? And one of the members just is way off. It could be the fighter. You could see a personality cast. Now, you know what? I don't want to deal with this, or an arrogant way. I always look for, number one, he has to be able to fight. That's the most important thing. Is there a look, a crossover to be a potential star or something like that? Humbleness, discipline. It's always I always prefer discipline over talent, because talent will get you so far. Without discipline, it's not going anywhere eventually. Where sometimes I might not be the most talented, but I'm gonna work my heart off. I'm gonna give you my 100%. Sometimes those are the kids that come out and beat the talented ones who aren't training. So yes, you would see it at times. With Ryan, it wasn't like that. Ryan was very, I want to learn. I want to hear things. I want to, at the beginning, just a great young kid with a good head on his shoulders, because he knew what he wanted. And I look back today and it's like, I should have known. He was very confident and he sounded very confident from day one, but I thought he was just trying to convince himself. And no, he fought very confident. So again, Haney, I give all the props for fighting like a true champion, getting up 3 times. But Ryan knew something that we didn't know.
Robert, he came in obviously the day before at the weigh-in, about 3.5 pounds over the 140 limit. He couldn't fight for the WBC World Championship on fight night. Did you think, because he fought Davis last year, there was that rehydration clause, he made that weight, but he has said that it did affect him and he wanted to move up. And so we thought, okay, move up to the next weight class. It should help you be a little bit more accommodating to that class. You being involved at so many points during his career and signing him and all that, was this expected? Did you think? Because I think even before, it wasn't the Duarte fight. I think wasn't that above 140 as well? Should we have expected this?
The Duarte fight was 143. I do believe the Duarte fight was 143. It was always scheduled that way. People thought maybe at the weigh-in, Ryan did make weight, and then it was changed to 43. Whatever the fight ended up with Duarte, that's what it was always intended for. In the past, we've seen fighters move from one division, make the jump in weight, but the very successful ones that have done it, and I didn't understand it back then. I was a fan. I didn't sometimes, and because there's not a lot of difference between one class and the other, Roberto Duran went from lightweight to welterweight. He didn't go to 140. He could have won a world title at 140, as great as he was, but he jumped to fight Sugar Ray Leonard. Now, at the time, you're thinking, oh, he did it because it was the Leonard fight and the money attracted him. Aaron Pryor, it was, I think, Wilfredo Gomez. No, he went to 26. But there's been a couple cases. Marco Barrera went from 115, won his first world title at 22. So there's been those cases where the jump of one division is not enough for that body when it's growing. If you see Ryan, and it makes me laugh sometimes, they'll post pictures and say, look at him, he must be on something now. Look, they show a picture when he's 18 years old, a baby with a baby body still. And then they show pictures of him when he's 23 years old. And today, even, at 25, his body looks so much physically so big. He looked really big and strong in the fight with Devin. And Devin gains a lot of weight and looks big, but he even looked that much bigger than Devin. So I didn't expect him. I didn't think he was going to make weight because of everything that was going on. I didn't know how serious he was really training. So I didn't think he would make weight, especially a couple days before when I said, he still looks big. I don't think he could physically make the 140, even though it was there close at the Davis fight, a year time, the work, the training, the gym. I think he's a 47. I really do. He looks like a 47. I think his body will be like, wow, thank you. I don't have to deplete. And even if at 47, he's still going to cut weight because he probably stepped in the ring closer to 65. So it's still a cut in weight. but I think he would be much more comfortable at 47. It's a shame that he didn't win the world title, that, he couldn't. But I think if he would have attempted to make the 140 and made the 140, could he have done it physically healthy and make it? Maybe we wouldn't be talking about him winning today. Maybe those extra 2 or 3 pounds would have drained him so much that he doesn't recover enough in that 24-hour period that the fight turns out different. So we've seen it in the past. Some people say, well, then that's not professional. He shouldn't have fought. Call it what it is. It happens. It's happened in the past. It'll continue happening. But as long as the other side accepted it, and whatever the conditions were, then we have the fight. I mean, imagine Devin could have said, no, we're not going to fight unless he doesn't make weight, regardless of the compensation. Then there would have been no fight. It would have been a disaster. People would have been blaming Devin. He should have fought. He should have. You never know until you go in there. You think it's all correct, but it's too late to say we shouldn't have. We should have turned it around. It's too late. Look, you went in there, you fought, you defended your title. You're still a champion today because of the rules, and you came up short. It's an experience that now you learn from.
So do you think that people who are criticizing the coming in overweight, not being able to gain the actual title at 140 and all that, whether it was a weight advantage or not, because like you said, Devin Haney, we all know, he also blows up fight night as well. He gains a lot of weight. So they were arguably pretty close to the same weight. They hydrate pretty well. Like you said, if the other side accepts it, there's terms. It's like, hey, let's proceed. From a business side, especially because you were involved in the business side for so long, the promotion side and all that. I mean, obviously you're still in some type of role like that. How do you? I mean, I know you kind of explained it, but how do you balance it in terms of professionalism? Like the people who are saying, the win isn't legitimate, it's not professional. He won, he got all this popularity, and he's becoming a strong A side and a big star. But the professionalism is what taints the sport. How would you respond to that?
I mean, there's rules and there's divisions and there's contracts for a reason. Sometimes it's inhumanly impossible for them to make and cut it. I don't know in this particular case. If I'm on the Devin side and this happens to me, and it's happened, you negotiate to the best that you think you can to make the fight happen. As a promoter, obviously you want the fight to happen. You've spent so many thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands to get this, and it's a disaster. People would have been, it would have been horrible had they walked away from the fight. So as a promoter, you try to make everything put together to fix the solution. And I don't think there was a mistake made as far as taking it. Obviously, easily to say yes today, we shouldn't have. But that's always going to stick in your head if Devin and his team walk away. Number one, they walk away from a lot of money. Number two, it's something you don't recuperate right there, and it's something that's going to bother you forever. Saying, "What if?" And there's nothing worse than what if. Now Now there's no what if. But at least there's a big amount in the bank. You still have the title. You learn from mistakes. But I think those that criticize, look, it's boxing. Yesterday's news in about 2 or 3 days, and then they move on. It's so funny to see. It's so funny to see how so many people were writing Ryan off. And today, so many people that wrote him off are on that wagon to say, "Oh man, I knew he was going to win. I actually bet money on Ryan." So it's funny to that, but that's boxing. The boxing fans in general are probably the hardest fans to please in any sport. I take it to like Joe Montana wins the Super Bowl, or if Purdy, my team, if Purdy would have won the Super Bowl this year against the Chiefs. I don't see Niner fans saying, yeah, but he wouldn't have been better than the Montana team. I mean, you enjoy the moment, or you don't compare them to greats from other eras, or you don't say this team isn't better than the team from the 80s. It's irrelevant. But in boxing, but he can't beat Tank Davis, or he wouldn't do this to so-and-so. It's like, no, but he wasn't fighting him. He was fighting Devin Haney, who last week was one of the top guys pound for pound, and he shouldn't be now disregarded like he was nobody, and Ryan just got just another win. And the way he did it,
What did you think about Harvey Docks, the referee's performance? That's getting a lot of attention as well. Maybe the many times that he did break up the clinches and all that. There's people looking at it from different directions. What did you think about it?
I saw a video today, and it was like, man, it hurts boxing. These are boxing people supposedly putting these little videos together and throwing them out, and it's like you're hurting your own sport. But I saw a video today that somebody put out and saying that they need to investigate corruption and this and that he pushed Ryan to the corner, and then he fixed his pants before he started counting. I mean, literally, that's what the video says. And then he starts counting, slow count. Well, yeah, you always got to make sure the fighter goes to the neutral corner. You come back, you start the count, but he started the count with the timekeeper's count. So he didn't start 1 when he came back. He started at 3. So if he brushed his hand right by his pants, he wasn't fixing, oh, shit, I'm on TV, let me make sure. So I think we tried to get in too much. Could he have stopped the fight? So check this out. I think he could have stopped the fight at one point. Then those same fans that are criticizing him for not stopping the fight today would be saying, oh, see, he protected Ryan because Devin Haney was going to come back. And so it's like, now a referee, and a lot of times, yes, there is some bad calls, bad decisions, but we get the benefit of reviewing and watching and rewinding and watching. And the referee has to be right there they don't have like, hey, bro, you should stop the fight, or hey, you should give him an 8 count. All right. It's on their moment right there. And things are happening so fast that they got to make that judgment call. They can't like time out. Hey, supervisor, what do you think? So it's on a dime. I think he might have not had one of his best nights. We could say that for a fact, but he's probably one of the top referees in the world. And that's why Nevada, who usually doesn't bring in officials from outside of Nevada, has brought him into so many of the top fights, And I think on that, we have to be a little bit of saying, we all have a bad day at the office. We all have the magnitude of the event. It's going so quick. At one moment, I remember when Devin got clipped by Linares and he was hurt in the next 2 rounds. Hey, I'm coming to hold. Obviously, at the time, I'm with Linares and I'm representing him and I'm yelling at the ref, hey, come on, break it up. Because I'm thinking, let him get some space, another shot, and maybe we win. But as a fighter, the fans are like, they don't understand. He was holding on. He was scared. Hey, you're going to do whatever it takes to survive. I'm not, okay, I'm hurt. Hit me again, knock me out. That's not how it works. You got to we criticize him for not holding at times when, hey, you're hurt, 10 seconds to go, do whatever you got. Hey, spit the mouthpiece, hold on tight. If they got to take a point away for holding, fine, but I'm not going to get knocked out if I can survive, So we got to learn there's tricks, and fighters have to use every trick before saying, okay, I'm out of tricks now.
You mentioned during your talking right there, Robert, that at one point you felt the fight could have been stopped. At what point was that?
I think it was the 7th round when I think there was like maybe 2 knockdowns and one wasn't a knockdown, and there was still 2 minutes to go when he got hurt. So I've always, even against my guys, I've always said, if the ref is going to err, whether it's stopping too soon or stopping too late, let's err on the stopping too soon, because at least you can send that kid home to his family and there'll be another fight. There'll be another day. Where stopping it too late, I mean, we've seen it. We don't need those, So there was a point. Did I think he was ever in a danger of injury? when you're hurt, and now it's affecting where I can move away for the next shot, and Ryan's so fast, and now I've seen, and there's still 2 minutes to go, that's where I'm going to be more concerned of a stoppage. Now, if there's 10 seconds to go, and again, they don't have a time watch showing, but you know based on experience how much time is left, because the knockdown was early on in the round. That's where it's like, okay, they got to start looking now. I think that was the second knockdown, if I'm not mistaken. So it's now like, okay, it's only getting worse. Now, if Devin's a big puncher, that's another thing to take in consideration. If I'm losing now the fight, I'm falling behind. But my opponent is a big puncher who can turn around the fight with one punch too, then it's like, okay, now maybe Ryan's going to take more chances, but at the same time, he gets a chance of getting clipped and caught too. But Devin's not necessarily known as a big puncher, although I thought coming up to 140, he was going to be a bigger puncher than 35 because he's not depleted now of making the weight, cutting him, killing him to make the 35. But at that point, you could see Devin wasn't relying on trying to hurt Ryan. It was more on, let me get back into this fight and try to dominate you without, I mean, even though he was trying to land a big bomb to like back off a little bit, but that wasn't going to turn around. So yes, I thought maybe around that round, I wouldn't have been like, oh, they stopped it too early. I thought it could have been stopped.
You said earlier that you had noticed Ryan and some improvements after just one partial camp with Eddie Reynoso on the Canelo fielding undercard. Is there anything you noticed in this past weekend's fight?
Well, confidence, 100% confidence. A kid that, again, he fooled me. A kid that was very confident from the get-go. He called for the Haney fight, and that surprised me. I saw him at the Super Bowl, and I said, why? Why? He goes, oh, don't worry, I got this. And there was no media. It wasn't to, an interview. I'm like, this is you and I talking. He goes, don't worry, I got this. Watch. So confidence. Obviously they know each other. They fought each other 6 times. I put that aside. Even though you see things, you know things. One of the reasons Evander Holyfield was always very confident of beating Mike Tyson is because of run-in they had when they were amateurs. They were up in the training center. So I think that always gave Holyfield like, I know who you really are, and you know who I really am. So there was that. I think in this particular case, they were 3-3. There's no doubt in my mind, Devin was very confident, probably rightfully so more confident than Ryan should have been because he's gone through the Lomachenkos, the Cambosas, the Jojo Diaz, the Linares. He went to those graduation steps that are necessary to get you where he was, where Ryan hadn't. He hadn't had, outside of Luke Campbell, who was a great amateur because he was a medalist and a great Olympian, Ryan was beating guys that he was supposed to beat. Oscar Duarte was dangerous because he's a big puncher, competitive fight, but Ryan was very confident. For him to say, I want Haney, for him to, everything was going, the press conferences, whether we thought they were outrageous and crazy, which, yeah, it was out of character. But again, a genius. Now on a Monday, we could see with the results, but very confident. Whether that came from Derrik's teachings or being in the gym, working things, I do see a young kid that, a young man now, not a kid, that is, he was always very confident he was going to do things. But today I see this man very confident and I see a relaxed. So that's when I'm like, yeah, like the aftermath, I've seen a couple videos of his and relaxed, and I'm going to church yesterday, Sunday. And I'm like, wow, you even fooled me. So I give him so much props.
There was a point during the fight, Robert, where, I think it was after probably the second knockdown. The momentum was definitely on Ryan's side, and he's going to the corner at the end of the round, and he's kind of like just dancing his way to the corner, and then he looks at somebody in the corner and just kind of, playing with somebody in the crowd. And then Derrick James steps in, puts a stool in, steps in, and kind of flips him around and tells him, hey, get back in the zone. He's like, don't let this go by you. We're here to win. Pretty much checks him like, hey, stop playing around.
I love that.
With somebody like Ryan, just because he is the personality that he is, and especially because he won, and like you said, he has confidence now. Do you think this is the playbook he might sustain going forward because he sees that, this kind of helped me. I became more confident. I won, because as a trainer, how is Derrick James going to reel that in to try to hone that behavior?
I think that was amazing. That was great work by Derrick, because if you have somebody in the corner that just cheers that on and keep going, Ryan may, in the next couple rounds, get so comfortable and so overconfident. That's where you can get caught. You fall asleep and you're enjoying the moment, and you're, hey, fans over here, and hey, look what I'm doing. It's an easy fight. Boom. Don't let your opponent grow. Don't get overconfident, because it could change on one. So him bringing him, I think I remember he put his head on him, head to head, and like, hey, focus. And yeah, you're right. We're here to win. Focus, And I think that is definitely necessary and was necessary. And again, great job from Derrick, because it brought him back. Okay, you're right. There's a plan. We're on a mission. We're here to do something. Focus. And I think that was very important.
Based on the scores that we read at the beginning of the episode, 115, 109, 114, 110, and then 112, 112. What kind of fight did you see out of those three scores? If somebody didn't watch the fight, you're describing it to them, which one of those matches up the best?
I did see, I could understand, like, whoa, this is crazy. How we go off a lot of times as fans, 3 knockdowns. Wait a minute. How could it be a draw, or how could it be close if one guy knocked down the other guy 3 times, but the other guy didn't knock down the other guy with none? But wait a minute, you're forgetting the rounds that there weren't knockdowns. There was a point deduction, and then the other rounds where there wasn't knockdowns, Devin was winning. So it does close the gap, and it's sometimes, if we're not keeping the score and we hear it at the end, we're like, wait a minute, that's so outrageous. It's hard to understand, but I didn't keep score. Obviously, when it's a fight that I'm not involved with, but a fight that I like both guys, I'm entertained. I'm waiting to see how it's going to unfold. I don't want to even keep score, but I mean, look, right before they give the scorecards, I think the zone, Mannix gave it a draw. He had it a draw. I remembered, and maybe this is more being very biased, the Ring magazine asked a lot of us on a panel what our prediction is, and I had put a draw. And I was like, oh shit, that'd be cool. It's a draw, because I'm probably the only one that picked the draw. So I'd be looking like, wow, this guy got the draw, and he called it. So when I heard the first scorecard, a draw, it was more of me saying, I got it right based on my prediction a month before, then wait a minute, this is a bad scorecard. What fight are you watching? So again, I didn't keep score. Obviously, the right guy won. Obviously, the 3 knockdowns are huge. But again, there could be 3 knockdowns minus a point deduction. A lot of times I heard another one that, oh, look, they were trying to, take it away from Ryan. They took a point away. It was on the break. He was trying to break him up, and then he throws a punch. Now, could there have been a warning, especially on a fight of this magnitude? I think so. But a lot of the times we forget the warning is done in the dressing room. Do not, if I call break, do not throw a punch, because I will take a... So they're already warning you there. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to warn you if you do it in the ring. So it depends on who's giving the warning, how stern and how, strict he's going to be come fight time.
in the subsequent aftermath after this, obviously the momentum, biggest win of Ryan's career so far. Following a win like this, with all the buzz that it's gotten, and even leading up to the fight, regardless of how the marketing happened, how he did it, how it was done, there was people interested where they wanted to see. Some people call it a train wreck. Some people just wanted to see the fight. Some people were just interested to watch what was going to happen next. Where after a fight like this, with the attention that it's got, and obviously the momentum and the power that Garcia gets as the A-side fighter, especially after this fight, where does Ryan go in the echelon of power of these fighters? You got the Canelo, you got AJ, the standard bearers of the last couple of years or so. Where does Ryan line up in those now?
Great question. And I'm proud to say that he's there. He's the pay-per-view fighter now. He is a pay-per-view fighter. It takes certain fights. It takes a certain way of not just, I'm on a pay-per-view and I won the fight. No, it's winning in this fashion. Ryan, I can say now, has arrived to that stage where, like an AJ, obviously like a Canelo, he's that new generation fighter that is now a pay-per-view fighter. He can. It's going to be really, doesn't matter who the next opponent is. People are going to be lining up to say. I mean, obviously the diehard boxing fans are going to want to see who that next opponent is before they decide, right? But the masses, which there's 80% more than there is the diehard boxing fans that pick and choose, the masses now are going to line up every time to see a Ryan Garcia, because it's the young kids telling their fathers, Dad, Ryan's on, you got to order it. It's the middle age, I'm going to watch it. I was at the car dealership today, and I went to buy a battery for the key, and I'm walking back to my car, and a couple of the salesmen are taking pictures of my car. Now, my car has a license plate that says Ali Goat, and that caught their attention. So I walk up and I said, hey, check out the hood. And the hood, there's a decal of Muhammad Ali because it's wrapped where he knocks out Liston, that famous picture. And they're like, oh, cool. Hey, did you see Garcia's fight this weekend? That's where you see the level of people talking about it. And again, the genius, like you said, we were tuned in to see the train wreck. We were tuned in to see what we were going to see. I, who am a boxing guy and been involved in Ryan's career in the past, I tuned in because I didn't know what to expect. So it's like, no matter where my mind, and I've always said, expect the unexpected of any fight, in any show, be ready, be prepared. This was one that I'm like, no matter what I can expect, I have a feeling that I'm going to be surprised of what I'm going to get. Like, and it was like, there was moments where I'm like, is he going to is he really going to bite both ears and get DQ'd? Where is it going? But he had us going all over our mind, thinking, wow, Monday night at a club in New York, drinking tequila, Friday at the weigh-in, drinking beer. What the heck? What's going on here? This is not Ryan. But he had us everywhere, and they were talking about him doing it. So again, he is now at the pay-per-view stage, and props to him. 25 years old. It does take a special kind of fighter of the past. We've only seen De La Hoya, Mayweather, at those age, Chavez with a country behind. This kid has done it, without winning a world championship. Everybody else had to win world titles before. Like, Ryan's the only one that's gotten here and still hasn't won the world title. So you got to give it to him. We're in a different era, and he is a genius.
Robert, how would you match Ryan for his next 3 fights?
Great question. If I want to go the pay-per-view model, if I want to make business, hey, what's that guy with the rainbow hair?
Sean O'Malley.
Oh, the UFC guy?
I mean, he's at that point now that now you're going to bring 2 different worlds colliding, and they're both he could do masters now. He's at that point where he can do not little things, big things like that. But we keep it boxing. Obviously, I would test the waters at 145, maybe with another opponent at 140, bring him up, a good name. But to test how do I feel at 147, how my body's going to react at 147, I think 140 is done and over. I think why even, obviously there's some good fights at 140 that I'd love to see. The Pitbull fight, the Teofimo Lopez fight would be good. But I think he could easily say, hey, Teofimo, let's rock and roll at 140. At 147. And what else is there for Teofimo? Again, to fight a Ryan at 147 versus, he had already said, Teofimo said, hey, I'm going to fight Bud Crawford. This is big. This is really big.
Assuming, the pay-per-view does well. Obviously, it was obviously tracking well leading up. And, I think the expectation is going to do pretty well. And Tank Davis wins his next fight, which was announced also within like that Friday or last Saturday against Frank Martin, which is a tough fight. I think Ryan has obviously made himself more attractive again to a Tank Davis, more money on the table, a rematch coming off a big win like this. But who becomes the A side here?
That's where it's going to be tough. I don't think that fight's happening anytime soon. Although it would be the question to many of the fans, to many of us, are going to be like, okay, without all this different, the weight and the dehydration and or the rehydration, clause and certain catch weights could be a different story, especially after what we saw Saturday night. But I don't think we'll see it soon. I think if I'm Tank and his people, and obviously he has very good guidance because he's had a tremendous career also so young, I think the best fight for Tank is the rematch with Cruz. And it's a rematch that'll Cruz wants. It's a rematch that I think Tank wants. It's a rematch that the fans will buy. But it's also a fight that if Tank wins, he claims another division. He wins another world title because Cruz just won a title. And then it just keeps building to that fight where maybe we get it at the end, towards the end, not too late, but not too early. That rematch at 47, if Tank can, he's obviously a lot shorter. I don't know if he can make 47, but I don't see that fight happening at a 45 per se.
Where does Devin Haney go from this loss? Taking your first loss as a professional. He's only mid-20s as well. I think they're about the same age, 25. Where do we see him go next?
Again, one fight does not write you off. I give them props. This new young generation, they're willing to fight each other. Teofimo fought Lomachenko. Devin went to Kambosos, his hometown, twice, fighting Lomachenko as well. Ryan fighting Davis, fighting now Haney. I love it. I love what we're seeing. So we can't write them off because then it tells that next group, oh, don't take a fight because if you lose, you're written off, you're thrown. So we got to applaud that. We got to see more of that. We got to remind them that, Leonard, Hyler, Hearns, De La Hoya, Trinidad, Vargas, they all fought each other and they all had losses. And guess what? We still talk about them today as fighters, as great as they were. And Devin, what he should do is obviously take a good break, a good rest. It was a tough camp, tough fight. He had a lot of fights back to back to back. The body needs a rest after a war like this and come back slow. Don't come back too fast. I already heard we want the rematch. That's fine. That's what you're supposed to say. And that's great to say from a warrior, from a champion, from a big heart. But it's the team that needs to say, okay, not yet. And see how he comes back. Even if it's a 10-round fight, and I know it's hard to, he's a world champion. You can have Julio Cesar Chavez in between fights would go to Mexico and have a tune-up and a warm-up. But more importantly, to see not the physical aspect of him. He'll recuperate from that. He's young. His body will be fine in 2 weeks, It's the mental aspect. The questions that need to be answered that only he can answer once that bell rings. He can answer them in the gym tomorrow, sparring, and look good again and confident, take the headgear off, walk to the ring, the bell rings, and the mind starts playing tricks. So it's a slow return, but more importantly, get one fight past you. Get that win. Okay, Ryan's fight it's a couple fights ago. Okay, now we're ready to continue where we left off. He's young enough. Don't burn him out right now and be done by 28.
Robert, do you think we'll see Ryan over on one of the Saudi Arabia cards now?
I think, again, because he's now at that stage where he is a pay-per-view fighter, I think that would be amazing. At one point, I think we talked about him fighting in the UK years ago. So I think Ryan fighting in Japan or fighting in Saudi Arabia or fight now where he goes because of this performance on Saturday, he's a big attraction. And I love the fact boxing's worldwide, and to keep growing, definitely think about fighting, outside, worldwide, to keep that fan base even growing more.
Robert, was there ever a time when you were at Golden Boy or, as an executive or anything where, because like we talked about earlier, going into this fight for Ryan and Devin, people were tuning in because you didn't know what to expect. A lot of boxing people were picking Haney. I mean, obviously, I think you look at the resumes and stuff. We both picked Haney, so a lot of people were wrong the next morning. But as being a part of the promoter at one point, was there ever a time during your career in that position where your guys' fighter was going up against another fighter? You knew it was going to be a tough fight. And you're just like, oh man, like this is going to be a really tough fight. We're on our fighter's side, but this is we're kind of nervous here, but it's we're going to be on our fighter's side regardless. And then your fighter ends up winning. With that subsequent feeling that you feel as being on his team. Was there ever a fight that you experienced like that during your time there?
Many fights. One that comes right off I remember Patrick Texiera. Mm-hmm. Patrick Texiera from Brazil was fighting a top-ranked fighter named Carlos Adames. And I knew of Adames. I had heard of Adames even before Top Rank had signed him. Roberto Diaz had told me, man, this kid could punch. This kid's strong. Fight him. Sign him. We didn't sign him. Now we're fighting him for, I believe it was going to be an interim title, or later became full-fledged maybe a couple days before the fight. And I remember telling Patrick and the team, look, there's a great opportunity. We're fighting for the title, but, the first 6 rounds, just invest to the body to stay away from this guy. I knew Adames had always struggled to make weight. So I figured if we stay away, because he was a big puncher, strong guy, if we stay away, maybe we have a chance, to break this guy down and take him into the second half of the fight. And that's exactly what happened. Patrick followed the game plan. He worked the body. It drops him late in the fight, wins a close decision. And I was thrilled. And it was like, Margarito and Mosley and Margarito. Nobody gave Mosley a shot. And I remember Mosley telling me, when I took him to do his medicals in San Pedro for the fight, and he's telling me, man, you're going to see, again, the confidence of a fighter goes a long way. And he told me why he was going to beat him and how he's going to beat him. And, and it was, you want to believe him as your fighter. You want to win for your team and your company. But on the other side, you have this guy that is destroying everybody. And it's like, man, I want to believe you. And I hope you're right. And then when he did it in the way he did it, in the fashion he did it, it was like, wow, that was good. To me, it's still one of the best victories I've been a part of, because of a lot of things involved with the fight, the magic raps, as we call them, and just Mosley overcoming the odds. And he believed in himself more than everybody else. And that just always sat really cool with me.
But Robert, have you ever been that confident you put $2 million on a fighter?
I didn't have the $2 million to put, even if they're professionals. I wish I would have. Definitely.
On the co-main event, Robert, a Golden Boy fighter, he still is obviously. John Scrappy Ramirez took his first loss He's now 13-1. David Jimenez beat him in a 12-round unanimous decision win by scores of 117, 111 twice, and 116, 112 for the WBA Interim Super Flyweight Championship. Were you there when you guys signed, or was that after your time?
I brought in Scrappy with Zurdo, put him on a couple times while I was there, and then he signed after I left. Real close with Scrappy and his team. I posted even before the fight, I think it was Saturday morning or Friday afternoon or something. This is a 50-50 fight. This could steal the show. You know, the little guys, I've always been entertained by the little guys in the divisions in boxing because they let their hands go and they fly. They throw on average 75 to 100 punches around. So you see a little bit more action. So I said, hey, this could be a stealer. It could steal the night because I knew Jimenez. He had fought. I had matched him against Ricardo Sandoval, one of my top guys that I was always trying to, move into a position and get into a world title and believe he will be a world champion. But I matched him there, and Jimenez showed me a lot of conditioning, showed me some talent outboxing and lowering the output of Ricardo, who normally throws a lot of punches. So I knew he was a fighter of respect. Scrappy had the momentum again because, he had been active. He had been fighting. Very confident young man. Should be. He's undefeated. Sometimes what you can't buy is experience. And where Jimenez had a tremendous amateur background, again, he won a medal for his country. Scrappy didn't have that amateur background. He's learned a lot on the job. He's done a tremendous job to even get to where he's at with what little he had as far as experience. And that just shows that anything's possible. And he came up short, but I'm proud of him because he proved he belongs there. He didn't get blown out. He did lose a decision. But his spirits, I'm not saying he's, celebrating, but his head's up. And I read a couple comments where I'll be back. This is not it. It's not over. This is where you can learn and grow. But this is the beauty of boxing. As a matchmaker, as somebody that was worked with so many fighters, I want to see the real character of a fighter. This is where it gets tested. Does he throw in the towel and say, I'm over with this? Or does he come back stronger? And just from his actions and words he's mentioned over the last couple of days is I see a fighter coming back with something more to prove and hungrier and working even harder.
And then also Arnold Barboza got the hard-fought split decision win over Sean McComb by scores of 96, 94, 97, 93. And then there was 92, 98 for McComb. What'd you think about that matchup? That got some attention. People felt like, Barboza probably shouldn't have got that win. What'd you think?
I could see why. First of all, I think the kid deserves a rematch or a big fight. I think he definitely deserves to come back and get another opportunity based on that performance. He was supposed to be blown out. I think, you see the record, 5 knockouts. You don't give it too much thought. I could see where Barboza might have, and this is a learning experience for him, for Arnold, to I'm not going to say overlook, but somewhat of not get up for an opponent like that. Maybe thinking, shit, if Ryan pulls out, I got Devin. And you're mainly, maybe the more of the focus was, hopefully Ryan pulls out or something happens and I can fight Devin because that's the big fight that I've been wanting for. So when it doesn't happen and now you're facing this kid that you don't know too much of or the world doesn't react the same way, you're not, okay, it's hard to get up. And it gets to the point where, you're not training the same. You don't get up at 5 a.m. to run that extra mile when I think what Arnold needs now is that big fight. He has the record. He's at the point. He's number one. I think he needs that big fight to really motivate him, and that way we could see his true potential.
Staying on the Barboza topic for a second, Robert, why do you think, he's 30-0 now? He was with Top Rank, obviously, before getting with Golden Boy over here, but why do you think it's taken him so long to get to that big fight or any type of, world championship fight? What's going on there? You as an advisor for fighters and being involved with fighters, what do you think happened there?
I never worked with him. I didn't know him. He signed with Golden Boy and came on. I mean, I knew of him, of course.
Yeah.
But I didn't know him. He fought actually and beat one of my guys, Danielito Zorrilla, on a top-ranked card. But when he came over to Golden Boy, I was already gone. The questions have to be yes, you're right. Why already at this stage hasn't he had that big fight? I don't know. Have they turned him down in the past? Or have they not been presented? Was he, for many years, Juan Manuel Marquez felt like, oh, while Barrera and Morales are fighting, I was off to the side. Nobody would give me that big leap into the bigger fights. Neither of the Barrera Morales were fighting. They were fighting each other. Why wasn't Arnold in those positions? Don't know. Was he turning them down? Were they asking for more money than there was? Those questions have to be asked. Or was it just the come up was a little slower? But now the thing is, now he's there. He's number one. Push him to that mandatory, him and Teofimo. I mean, I saw a little bit when I was at Virgil's fight in January in Vegas, and I saw a little bit of that friction and that, that tension when I saw them walk by each other, and it was like, I think that's a fight we'd all tune in to watch. He's fighting a fighter who's with his former promoter. He's fighting for the world title. Teofimo's had some fights where he doesn't look so sharp. I think they would both get up and really bring the best out of both of them.
And then rounding off the card, Sergey Derevyanchenko gets the unanimous decision win over Vaughn Alexander over 10 rounds. And then Charles Conwell making his debut under the Golden Boy banner gets the sixth round TKO over Nathaniel Gallimore. What do you think about Charles Conwell, Robert?
I mean, he has the record, he has the pedigree, he has the credentials. I didn't watch the fight. I was at Tom Loeffler's show live here in Commerce Casino in LA on Saturday, and then I left early to come in and try to tune into the main card, but I didn't watch theirs. But obviously, activity is needed. If I didn't see his fight, but if he didn't look as sharp, it's because he hadn't fought in a long time. So what he needs is just, okay, you got the win, great. Get back in the gym, get some weeks behind you, and get right back in there to start getting sharp to what his true potential could be. Because there's some big fights out there for him.
And then this upcoming Saturday, the 27th of April, from Fresno, California, on DAZN, Jose Ramirez, 28-1, goes up against Rances Barthelemy, 32-1. When's the last time Golden Boy had a Fresno card? When you were there, when did you guys have a Fresno card?
I think it's been many, many years. I don't remember. I was there 15 years. I don't remember being in Fresno. I went to Fresno with Lamont Roach Jr. fighting for his first world title against Jamel Herring, but that was a top-ranked card. So as far as Golden Boy, I think it was even before my time.
So no Fresno cards during your time, right?
No, not during my time. They did go to Bakersfield in Fresno, I think, before I started, when Golden Boy was, starting off. But during my years there, I do not remember a Fresno card. There was possibly right before me Sacramento, and yeah, that's about it. I don't remember anything in Fresno or Bakersfield or Central Valley.
And then about this fight, Jose Ramirez versus Rances Barthelemy, what do you think about this opponent for Ramirez as his debut under this banner?
Personally, I mean, look, Barthelemy is you could say, let's say, in a polite way, he's a cutie fighter or stinky fighter, but he's going to be a very difficult fighter for Jose to catch. I could see, and I say this with all due respect to his ability, his style. He knows how to fight. Obviously, he has a good record, but he doesn't care to please the crowd or one of those fighters that, you know what? Let's just go. The people are booing. I'm gonna go for it and give the people what they came to see. If I have to look ugly, but I get the win, that's what I'm gonna go for. And I think that's what he'll shoot for. And for Ramirez, it may be a little tough to close in those corners. I mean, obviously, he has a great corner behind him. He's experienced. He's been a world champion. He's fought all those different styles, the Cubans and the amateurs. But I think personally, as a fan and as a matchmaker, I would have liked a little bit more of a guy that I'm going to stand in there with Ramirez and trade. and get an impressive knockout, make us a very good splash and an announcement that I'm here, 140, my debut with the new company, and make a big bang. I don't know if that can happen with Barthelemy. I could see Barthelemy on a bike, holding, moving, pushing, running. Hopefully I'm wrong and we get a very exciting, very entertainment fight.
You kind of answered the question I was going to ask. It's kind of a strange selection for a Golden Boy debut, a Fresno home crowd.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, I think a more exciting, I don't know, a British toe-to-toe guy, another Mexican that comes in and it's not going to move around, maybe not a banger per se, but somebody that stands ground and said, let's go toe-to-toe. And, similar to the Ricky Perez, the kid that fought and beat JoJo. Not a big puncher, but fights like a puncher. He's not going to run around the ring. He's going to come at me. Something like that, entertaining. The crowd would have gone crazy because that kid could take a punch. Alexis Rocha was landing bombs on him, and he'd come right back and throw punches. And it's like the crowd even started going crazy because that's entertainment. This kid, I could see Barthelemy getting on the bike, moving, running. And got to see what Jose, can he cut off the corners? Does he have that, spurt to like, okay, you're not going to run for me. Hopefully it's a little ring.
I know. Do we know if this is at 140 or technically a 140 fight?
I believe it's at 140. Yes, I believe so.
Do you think Jose Ramirez? I mean, I would think yes, but based on obviously the money that he could make, but Ramirez would move up to like 147 because Ryan says he's moving up for a fight like that against Ryan in the future.
Absolutely. You take these decisions based on who and based on worst outcome scenario. Recently I was with Pablo Cesar Cano, who fought the majority of his career at 140, did take some steps up and fought at 47. Paulie Malignaggi at 47. He fought Shane Mosley at 47. But those were big opportunities that if you lost to a Shane Mosley, there's no shame. He beat Zachary Ochoa on Pro Box last year. Then we get notified there's a possibility of a fight in the eliminator against Giasov. Looked at Giasov records, not a big puncher, even though he's a welterweight, which is not naturally Pablo's ideal weight. The pay was decent and the opportunity was there. If you beat a Giasov, you're now in a position where you can demand some higher purses. And at the end of the day, we weren't so much looking for a world title. I was more looking at, is there going to be some money in the bank to retire for you? And weighed out the benefits. And it's like, okay, Giasov shouldn't really hurt you because he's not a big puncher. Let's do it. Now, you would have told me, okay, look, he won the mandatory now and he has to fight Terrence Crawford. Then I would have been like, okay, Pablo, let's make sure everything's in line. And if the money's there, you go for the opportunity, but not realistically, that's not your weight class, So with Ramirez and Ryan, if I'm Team Ramirez and Bam Ramirez, I mean, that's what you sign up for. You sign up for these type of fights and you negotiate it to the best and hope for the best and train for the best. And, you go in there with the mentality of winning, but at the end of the day, that's the big fights. That's what everybody's there for.
Robert, were you working with both Cano and Linares when they fought each other?
Yes.
What did you do there?
Were you like standing in the middle between them? Like, I'm on both sides here.
Very funny one you asked, because in particular with them two, I've been very close to them since they were both about 17, 18 years old and guided their whole careers. It was Jorge that told me, after he fought a kid named Abner Cotto from Puerto Rico, he told me, you know what, I felt so much better at the new weight. He didn't want to make the 35 anymore. And he's like, I want to jump up. I want to go to 140. Let's try to get the Mikey Garcia fight. I'm like, Jorge, you knocked out Abner Cotto, who's 130, even though it was at 138, there was a catch weight. He's not really a 140. Let's test ground with the real 140 before we go into that deep water of Mikey Garcia. And it was with Cano, and I remember Michael Woods, actually, the night of the fight, asked me as I walked into the arena, he says, what round do you think Linares stops Cano? And I said, again, I'm with both of them. They were both with Golden Boy at the time. I was the only Golden Boy. It was on an Eddie Hearn Matchroom card, but I was there as the only rep for Golden Boy. And I said, Michael, it's not an easy fight. It's not a gimme fight. If anybody stops anybody, it could be Cano over Linares. And he said, you got to be kidding me. I said, no, Cano can really, really punch. Jorge is going to have to be very, very focused and sharp. And Jorge could win maybe on cuts or later in the fight or a decision, but not a knockout. Wow. So Michael was like, really? He's that? And that I never thought in the first round, but I remember going in the ring after the fight and going to Jorge to see if he was okay. And the first thing he told me is like, hey, we'll go back to 35. 140 is too big. And I said, okay, let's go. We'll go back to 35. And that's what it was. And obviously that resurrected Cano's career into some bigger fights and gave him motivation in life again.
Linares had that weird thing of when he got stopped, it was always early.
Yes. When whenever he got dropped, he wouldn't win. And even though he was a 3-division world champion, he had never made it to the 12th round. Either he won by knockout or he had lost by knockout. It didn't register until he beat Kevin Mitchell. No, until he beat Anthony Crolla by decision, because Jorge had never gone the 12 rounds. But when he got dropped by Kevin Mitchell, I don't remember the round, but it was late in the fight. I remember thinking we lost because Jorge had never got up and won a fight. And he got up and won that fight. So I remember in the dressing room telling him this, and this, right? And he says, yeah, well, that's out the window now because you can get up and win a fight. So let's get that behind. I think Jorge overthought a lot of times, a lot of things and let that get to him because there was an up and down. I mean, when he was on, probably one of the most beautiful fighters to watch, throwing combinations and boxing and moving. But when he was off, it was like his mind was somewhere else. People ask me what was one of the worst fights or something that haunted me, and it was always the Yayo Thompson fight. I swear I would have done it 10 more times, and I think Jorge would have won the next 9 fights. But it was that night that nobody was going to deny Yayo, and Jorge was in a tune-up. That's why they don't exist. Tune-ups don't exist. Coming off the DeMarco loss, I took him to Mexico to do that tune-up. And he gets stopped by Yayo Thompson in 2 rounds. And I was devastated because it bothered me for a long time.
And Linares was one of the ones, I don't know if he was the first one but at least on the big stage to visibly hurt Haney. I remember it was at the end of that round. I forgot which round it was.
10th round. At the end of the 10th round, he clipped with a beautiful right hand, but it was like 10 seconds left and it was a little too late. Yeah.
And Haney was on wobbly legs. And I think everybody thought, oh man, if there was 30 seconds left, just a little bit more time, he could have got the momentum.
100%. That could have turned around. I even thought after losing that fight against Haney, I said, you know what, it might have been inactivity hurt Jorge. He couldn't get going until after around the 7th, 8th round. It was already too late. Once he hurt him, it was too late. But it also showed me about Haney. He came back, he held on in the 11th and he recovers quick. Obviously, he's young. He's in great condition. But he took it well on the chin. Even though he was hurt, he didn't go down. So, again, you give him these marks as they go by and saying he's passing the test. He's passing the test. No reason to doubt him.
And then also on this card on Saturday, Robert, is Virgil Ortiz Jr., 20-0, goes up against Thomas Dolorme, 26-6-1. Virgil came back a couple months ago, but I think it was over in like the first or second round. It was pretty early night. He didn't really get too many rounds under his belt after being off for so long because of the medical issues he was experiencing. Do you think that as a fighter, if you were on his team or still within the Golden Boy banner, do you guys ever have conversations with fighters when they've had long layoffs and you say, hey, we're not telling you to like, if you see the knockout, take it, do what you got to do, we get the win. But, also if you can, try to get some rounds under you to try to get that wheel going again.
When you try to tell a fighter, if you hurt him, and that's the fighter's instinct, if you hurt him, get him out. Get the rounds in the next fight. If you hurt somebody, because the worst thing you can do is, okay, I want to get some rounds. I know I need some rounds, especially because of inactivity or layoff. I hurt him. I'm gonna back off a little bit. I don't want to finish him because I need the round. Don't let a fighter grow or get back into a fight because you never know. A headbutt, or you break your hand in the next punch, or something happens that you're like, man, I should have had him out when I had. Or he comes back and beats you because of whatever. You hurt somebody, finish him, get it over with, get the rounds in the next fight. So in that particular thing, no, you try to get the rounds with the right opponent that, hopefully will withstand. But Virgil, and I don't get tired of saying this, Virgil is special. It's unfortunate we haven't seen right now going into a third division, a two-time world champion of two different divisions, because he was very close at 140. He outgrew it. It's nature. He's a big, big boy. Man, sorry, I always say, because I've seen them since they were little or young. 147, it was very unfortunate what happened with him. I think that, being there that close, I was at the purse bid. We won the purse bid. The fight was there. It scheduled to happen, multiple times. It didn't happen for one reason or another. It's unfortunate that he's not at 154 already haven't been a world champion, but the past is behind. Live, learn, move on, focus on now. And he's very special. This is a kid that's so disciplined. This is a kid that's so talented. This is a kid that the power's for real. This is a kid that's so easy to match make. They'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. He's not worried about the zero. He wants to compete against the best. I can't talk highly enough about him. I'm just excited to see him back, healthy, strong, and expect another knockout. He'll have the 100% knockout continue, and the streak continues.
And back to your doppelganger's gym, Robert Garcia.
Yes, yes. He'll probably be back in camp right away, no doubt.
With Virgil, Robert, being at 154, you got a lot of the guys from 147 who have moved up. Primarily, the biggest one, at least the biggest threat, probably the most marketable one right now, is Terrence Crawford. Being at 154, obviously you still got Charlo there. Spence has already said he's going to move up to 154. So, you got a pretty good mix of talent there. Where does Virgil fit in that mix? Assuming Crawford is number one in that division right now, just, based off the eye test, what people think as a fan. Where does Virgil fit in that mix right now?
He's right there. He's definitely right there. He can compete with any of them. I'm not saying he beats all of them or any of them, but he competes with any of them. Now, Crawford's in the position that we just mentioned, maybe not as big as a superstar or star pay-per-view as a Ryan, but he's right there to pick and choose. He's earned it. He's won multiple weight divisions. He's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. Crawford is one of those guys that I've always said fighters of the past beat fighters of the next generation, right? So I'm very high on the 80s. I grew up in the 80s watching it. So Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, those are, to me, we're never going to see an era like that. There's not going to be fighters that compare like that. However, I saw a fan tweet something. How would Crawford compete, or how would a fight between Crawford and Aaron Pryor? And I'm like, oh, wow, I never thought of that one, right? And as I analyzed it and I thought about it, and they're fun. I don't like doing these fantasy matchups or anything because it's like, okay, there's no way of you ever finding out. But I thought of it and I said, you know what? Crawford beats Pryor. Crawford's the closest thing of the new era that I see and can say this is like a Marvin Hagler fight. That meanness in him of a fighter. I could switch left and right, and he's just a special breed. Now, he can pick and choose. What I'd love as a fan and somebody that has worked with Virgil all his years to see what, obviously the Crawford fight's the fight for Virgil eventually. Champion versus champion, unification, Once the dust settles, you are the two last man standing of that division, whether it's 54 or whether it's 60. But what I would love to see right now, as a fan of Virgil and as a fan of boxing, is imagine first one is Virgil against Charlo. A Texas shootout. Charlo's, still saying, wait a minute, you can't strip me. I got to defend my titles. I'll defend my title. But now you got an all-Texas battle, a shootout. Now, Charlo went up in weight and lost to Canelo, didn't get stopped. Virgil goes in there and fights him. And I'm not saying this is what happens, but if he stops him, and again, I worked with Charlo many years, so I know both of them, but it's a great fight. It's a world title fight. And if Virgil stops Charlo, which Canelo couldn't at a bigger weight, I mean, really, what does that say about Virgil? And then after Spence gets a fight or two, because if I'm Spence's side, after that fight with Crawford, again, similar to what I'm saying about Devin, get a couple fights in, get that loss behind, get the confidence back, get that feel that, okay, I'm back where I'm supposed to be. I'm confident. Now, if we thought Charlo and Virgil was big, Spence and Virgil even bigger, because now it's a Dallas shootout, not just the Texas shootout. So now Virgil, if he beats a Charlo and beats a Spence, it just made him and Crawford at 160 even bigger, So that's the route that I would like to see. Obviously, I'm not in control of that, but that would be ideal.
With the time that you were at Golden Boy, Robert, there, especially up until Virgil's, last opponent when you were there and matching him and helping matching him and stuff like that. You mentioned, I think the last time you were on here, that you had seen Charlo recently within the last year and a half or 2 years at a fight or backstage or somewhere around the area, and he was like with his family or something, and then you said hi to him, and he was just like, "Oh, this is Robert." He's like, "He's the guy who matched me as hard as I could." And he's like, "Oh, why'd you match me so hard?" And then you said, "Because look at where you're at now. You're at the Canelo fight." Would Virgil say the same thing about you?
You got a great memory, by the way, because that's exactly what happened when Carlos saw him. He told the family, "This is the guy that matched me so tough." "Robert, why'd you match me so tough?" I said, "Because look, that's where it got you. That's what got you the Canelo fight." And yes, I'm always proud of that. I don't know if Virgil would say I matched him too tough, but everybody I matched him with, they accepted. And again, he was always a pleasure to work with. Virgil, I don't know what fight it was. It might have been like his 11th fight that I matched him up with Juan Carlos Salgado, who had knocked out, coincidentally, Jorge Linares in the first round, former world champion. Virgil, I think, fought his first former world champion around 11th fight. And then, obviously went on and fought Mauricio Herrera and went on and fought. He's fought like 2 or 3 former world champions. And, even talking to him and his team one day, to his dad and Hector Beltran and everything, I was nervous at the weigh-in of Mean Machine. I was nervous. I remember pulling, obviously I'm not going to go show my nervousness to, Virgil himself, but I remember pulling Hector Beltran and saying, "Hey, Hector, tomorrow's smart. We don't need to go after this guy. He's going to come to us anyway. Jab's going to be key, smart. This guy's going to come at us. We don't have to go looking for him." I was really nervous, not because of what I had seen prior of Mean Machine. I mean, there was respect, his pedigree, his experience, but the day of the weigh-in, when I saw him get on the scale, I was like, "Oh man!" Did we bite off more than we could chew? Did I get confident because this guy had muscles in places that muscles don't even exist? I was like, "Oh man!" And obviously, muscles don't win fights, but you could see the guy put in the work, So it was like, well, this guy's prepared. He's not coming in just for, okay, let's see what you have, kid, and let me get a payday. No, this kid came to win, and obviously that ended up being a tremendous fight, and we saw a great action fight, but we also saw how good Virgil can be. And again, I've seen things from Virgil that we still haven't seen on the performance in the ring yet, because nobody's brought it out. he's at the point where every fight, I think we'll start seeing different things and improvements, because now at this level, fighters are going to bring it out of him. And it's just going to impress everybody to say, wow, I didn't even know he had certain things that I've seen. And it's like, I can't wait to see him again. He's gonna be like the talk of the town. It's just a matter of being active.
Robert, Danny and I have always said that Golden Boy, match hard, but when the fighters get to the big show, they're always ready. Now, if we look at it again, is that more of a Robert Diaz thing, or is that more of a Golden Boy trait?
I think it was a combination. When I first started at Golden Boy, my goal, and this was something I was very clear on, not just to Golden Boy, but that I would say to media, and that I would say, I'm not here to build a record. To be honest, I think a record can be built easily and financially not easy, but easily. You fight 20 guys that nobody knows of. You could get 20 wins and you get 20 knockouts all in the first round. That looks very impressive. But what happens with a fighter like that when they step up and fight somebody that's now not here to lay down and actually here to fight back? It's going to be like a deer in headlights. They're going to freeze because it's normal. You can't go from a D level and all of a sudden, okay, now I'm ready for the world title. I'm going to fight the world champion, because he's going to do things I've never seen. So I said, I'm not here to build a pretty record. I'm here to build champions. And I loved when years later I would hear criticism from other promotions. Oh, you want to get built tough or thrown in tough, go to Golden Boy. Because at the end of the day, that's what every young man that walks into that door and wants to sign a promotional deal with any promoter, their dream is not to say, take me soft. I want to be a world champion. I want to be a star. I want to make money. But the first thing that comes out is, I want to be a world champion. So how do you build a world champion? Well, little by little, step by step, you give them things that they have to think. It's look at it this way. If you're a fighter training in one gym and you have the same sparring partners Monday through Friday and you're dominating them, and sometimes the trainer tells you, hold back, don't go so hard, because then you're not going to have anybody to spar with. You get relaxed. You know who you're sparring with. You know, okay, I'll take it easy. But if you're somebody that's jumping from one gym to another, sparring everybody, you're going to grow more. You're going to learn things. You're going to have a bad day. You're going to get beat up one day and say, okay, now I know if I don't raise I'm going to get caught with the left hook. So you progress, you grow. Same thing in a fight, little by little. Okay, you never fought a southpaw. I'm going to give you a southpaw on this one. I want to see how you react, how you struggle. Going back to Virgil, everything you threw at him, knockout, 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 knockout. So you stepped them up a little faster than most. Now, if there would have been a time where, okay, he struggled, okay, take the foot off the gas and slow down a little bit. It happened to me at one point with Deontay Wilder. When he got caught by a kid here in Fantasy Springs, Harold Scaniers drops him, and Deontay was almost out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. My bronze medalist. And he got up, survived, got his legs back. A couple rounds later, knocks out Harold. So right there, I knew Deontay could knock anybody out, but why put him in unnecessarily with a big puncher? Now, in the heavyweights, it's not necessarily a big puncher. You carry your weight with the punch. You can knock anybody out, but I'm going to try to keep away from the heavy punches at this time when there's not something riding at stake. Obviously, once you get to that heavyweight title, hey, I can't help you now. Whoever's the champion, that's who you're going to face. And he won it, and it was so satisfying because a lot of critics were quiet, shut up and then say, okay, look, there was a reason. There was a progress. He started boxing late, but he won the title, and it brought it back for the first time to the U.S. in many years. So it just depends on what you have, what you're working with, who they are, what their weakness, what their strengths. You try to work with that. But again, with Virgil, he's passed every time with flying colors. So hopefully he will say that as well. Robert matched me tough, and that's why I got here.
The conspiracy theories behind that Wilder, there was like a 20 count, and There's no video footage of the fight and the one at Fantasy Springs you were talking about?
Yeah. I've always heard that. I think it might have been an undercard. In fact, it was an undercard because I remember a co-promoter to the main event came up to me at the weigh-in and said, "Hey, your card looks good." He had the bout sheet, except this particular fight because it looked like a mismatch. And I told him because he had the main event opponent against the Golden Boy fighter. And I said, including your fight, that's the only one I'm worried about. The rest, I know we're winning. But it was like to throw a jab at that promoter because I'm not even worried about your fight. This is the only one I'm concerned about. Harold Scanier, look, that's what sometimes boxing doesn't look at is some of these guys in the past, the Tex Cobb, there was a Virgil Smith. There was these road warriors that were always on the road taking fights and over 100, sometimes a lot of losses. The Rocky Balboa, theme is, but they learn on the job and they're tough. They're tough guys. And when you have a young prospect, sometimes don't look at just the record. Look at who have they lost to, because that's where some guys slip. They look at a record. Oh, he has so many losses. Yeah, I'm 8-0. I'll fight this guy with 20 losses. But it's who those 20 losses are, because sometimes there was a fighter in Mexico, Quirino Garcia, 154-pounder. They would have pulled his license in today's boxing because if you look him up on BoxRec, Quirino Garcia, I think he lost his first 20 fights, 0-20. And you're thinking, man, why didn't he get discouraged at 0-8? 0-9. I would have okay, this is not for me. I wasn't meant to be a boxer. But later on in his career, he starts beating guys and eventually beat Simon Brown, one of the best fighters in that time. And that's when you're like, talk about learning on the job. This guy learned by getting beat and then ended up, I don't know if he ever won a world title or not, but I think he competed for it and fought some of the tough names towards the end of his career.
Emmanuel Augustus. I always like a good Emmanuel Augustus story.
Exactly. Emmanuel Augustus, another one. That's what boxing needs these guys, because when you do come off a loss like Devin Haney today, do you go back and fight a guy who nobody knows or who's never been tested and is going to fall in one round? How does that benefit Devin? What Devin needs now is, when he does come back, is a fight that's going to give him confidence, but that he can get some rounds in and not be too much in danger of, obviously, you don't put him in with a big puncher in the next fight, because if he does get hit and there, you want to see him react and not just, shy away. So that's where those type of fighters are needed for boxing. Boxing's always been around the Rocky Balboas, in theory, the Emmanuel Augustus, those type of opponents that'll give you the rounds, give you that win in between the tough fights, because they can't all always be tough. And if you take them lightly or you're not ready because you just have a pretty record that's been built, they'll beat you. They will beat you.
Joseph Diaz Jr. versus Oscar Duarte, also this Saturday. You know both of them very well. What's your take on it?
I was involved in the 90% of both of their careers. I signed both of them. It's one of those fights similar to Linares and Cano that it's like, oh, man. But as a fan, I love it. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see a hell of a fight right there, because they're both coming off defeats. Duarte to Ryan Garcia, Jojo to Ricky Perez. They're both coming to prove something. On one side, you have a very talented young man in Jojo Diaz, a veteran now because, he's been around, Olympian, former world champion, had some rough times, had some challenges, but really is motivated right now. I think I see it with his kids. Really wants to prove the world wrong, really wants to prove something to himself. So I think in this particular fight, in this particular camp, his back's against the wall, making you when you're more dangerous when your back's against the wall. And Duarte, young, strong. What did he learn from the Ryan Garcia fight? How is he going to feel now with the new corner? He still has part of his old team, but Robert Garcia now a great addition. I see a very entertaining fight. Jojo is not a runner. He doesn't run. He boxes. He counterpunches beautifully. When he's on, Jojo was very fun to watch. And and he doesn't back down. If he gets hurt, he doesn't back down. He'll go to war. I think he's a little outgunned because of the power and the strength and the youth. Duarte just needs – the key for Duarte is let your hands go. You hit hard, but what good is it to hit hard if you don't let your hands go? So let your hands go. Set up. Not everything has to be hard. I would always tell Duarte this, you're trying too hard to knock the guy out with every punch. Loosen up, relax, touch, and then come in with that big power shot. Because Duarte does hit hard. I think even Ryan felt it and said it, man, that kid can punch. And I've heard people say that, hey, this kid punches similar to Maidana. So that should be a very, very entertaining fight. The question is, what JoJo shows up? Does Duarte become the first fighter to stop JoJo? Does JoJo come back now on this level of my back's against the wall and break Duarte apart and cut him up and even stop him? So I think this is a very, very, again, where the fight that could steal the show, fans don't want to miss that one. That's a fight. And again, I'm like that father that their two kids are fighting because I really like both of the guys. I really support both of them through the years. This is the one to fight. I wouldn't even go. I was invited. I'm not even going. This is the fight that I could really sit down at home and watch and say, I want to sit down. Like Scrappy says, get your popcorn. I'll be getting the michelada and the popcorn ready for that one.
I've always thought or would like to have seen JoJo stayed with a big trainer like Joel Diaz or, joined a gym like, Robert Garcia's.
That was talked about in the past with him and, not necessarily to take over, but to add. And he did try it a couple times with Joel Diaz. Obviously the fight with Tevin Farmer, and it was successful. But I think, it's in JoJo's hands. I mean, his dad's done a great job from somebody that didn't train boxing, didn't know boxing, actually literally YouTube videos and books to make a world champion, to take him to that level. But I agree. I think, to add somebody that's been there, and they had Ben Lira for many years, who's tremendous trainer, tremendous years of experience. I don't necessarily know what happened there, but at this point, it's pretty much now a do or die. For Duarte, it's not that bad because, he lost to Ryan Garcia. He lost early on in the career. A loss to JoJo Diaz is a setback, but it's not the end of the day. JoJo, because of his, he lost to Devin, Cepeda, Mercito, and close decision to Ricky Perez. Right now, that's why I say his back's against the wall, but that's what makes him more dangerous. The experience, the talent's there. It's just a matter of, I tweeted the other day, you could cheat your wife, you could cheat your job, you could cheat yourself, but you can't cheat boxing because everything unfolds inside that ring if you cut corners.
It was announced today, Robert, as we round towards the finish line for this episode, that Saudi Arabia is their general entertainment authority, which has been doing all these fights over there for the last couple of years that they've been calling Riyadh season. They're going to stage a fight in the LA area. I don't think they've announced an actual location venue yet, but everybody's kind of saying maybe the Staples Center Crypto Arena.
I heard the stadium.
You know what? We heard peeps about that, but that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot. But if anybody has the money, they definitely have the money. So headlined by Terrence Crawford versus Madrimov for a 154-pound WBA title, and also Big Baby Miller versus Andy Ruiz, Pitbull Cruz versus Rayo Valenzuela. And then also, this is the one we wanted to get your take on. Leo Santa Cruz comes back in a rematch against Abner Mares. Abner Mares hasn't fought quite a few years, primarily because of the eye injury that he had, and which happens. It's a contact sport. How would you look at Abner Mares kind of returning with an eye situation like that?
I worked with Abner for many years. I worked with Leo for many years. I know both of them. Obviously, I was excited when they fought the first and second time. I think if it is in LA, first of all, it's awesome that they're even thinking LA. As somebody that lives in LA, that LA is definitely, they know there's a huge fan base for boxing. I don't and I love the fact that there's even that talk that, His Excellency is bringing fights now into the U.S. and not just over. So again, boxing's worldwide. To bring, just imagine the event that they're planning on doing, and he's not going to do something at a little level. It's going to be huge. It's going to be big. The entertainment, the show, everything about it. So I just don't know if that's an LA card. As a LA boxing person, as a boxing person, and as an LA based fan, Terrence Crawford in LA. Yeah, diehards are going to go watch because it's Terrence Crawford, one of the top guys in boxing. But I think that's more of a Vegas card per se. Andy Ruiz, maybe that's why. Pitbull obviously will help, with the Mexican fan base here. Abner Mares and Leo being added to it, I think they're thinking, okay, that both LA fighters, that'll help push it as well. But yes, there has to be concern. Leo hasn't been the most active, so inactivity level, all right. But the concern there is, I know Abner wouldn't be doing it if he wasn't 100% physically fit. He's doing really well commentating. He, obviously has a beautiful family and his kid. And I don't see it being the typical story of the fighter coming back because of financial needs. I think it's more of like that itch. I saw it with Linares. I saw it with Cano. It wasn't really a money thing. I didn't like the way it ended last time. I want to go out in a big bang. I know I can do it. Maybe the rest did him well. Obviously, if he passes all his medical exams to get licensed, let's see. I'll support it. I'll watch it again because I know both of them early on, and both of the first two fights were entertaining. Does it turn into another Leonard Duran 3, or is it possible another Barrera Morales 3? So that'll be the question. What are we going to see in the third one? We'll see in a couple months.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, we always appreciate when you jump on here on the last round podcast, especially after a big fight, which seemingly solidifies some type of stardom for Ryan Garcia. So this could be the first of many, but he's definitely got a lot more eyeballs tuned in to his career, and only at 25 years old. So, it's possible that, he could be the next guy to take over for like a Canelo or these guys who are kind of on the older side, still there, but, the mantle's still there to be taken from. And, I think Ryan should be in that conversation, at least after this past weekend. So we know that you are advising fighters, you're still involved heavily in the boxing business. If there's fighters or somebody on their team who's listening to this right now, are your services open? If they wanted to contact you?
Absolutely. They can send me a message either through Instagram on Michelada Time. They can reach out to me, rdiazboxing@gmail.com. I'm not there saying, well, I won't answer you unless you pay me. No. Sometimes it's just a father. Hey, I have a question. Sometimes it's a trainer. I mean, the people out there that, if they're listening, that have reached out to me for one reason or another and asked me what I thought, I give them my opinion. And then obviously if there's work to be done where we can connect and work together, well, obviously more power to it. But I'm there as a friend, as a fan, as an opinion, advice, whatever it is, always out there, even with the fans. I get messages. What do you think of this fight? What do you think of that fight? Even this last weekend. Hey, what are you thinking? I'm always there back and forth chatting because, again, boxing is my life. It's my passion, and I love it. And I'll be in Vegas in a couple weeks watching the Canelo Munguia fight as a real fan and cheering on and knowing, again, working with both of them at one point. One of those fights that I know it's a can't miss for fireworks. It's going to bring out that Cinco de Mayo weekend, and it's going to bring out, that's where you'll be definitely want to open up a michelada and sit back and enjoy some fireworks.
Can we push you for a pick between two of your children, Munguia and Canelo?
Absolutely. It's going to be a great fight. Mexico wins. The fans win. I mean, two top Mexican fighters putting on the stage here in the U.S. Can't be anything bigger. I have to favor Canelo 100% because of the experience. However, you never know when Father Time comes knocking and says, hey, se acabó, it's over with, you know? And Munguia is not coming to survive. I could see it. I could feel it. Munguia is young, strong, and most importantly, what we touched on earlier, when you believe you can win, it's hard to say, no, you can't. So that's where I think it's going to be nothing but fireworks. Prediction, great fight. Canelo wins by knockout in the late rounds.
One last thing, Robert. Lamont Roach. We had a listener last week who tweeted at us because we didn't mention your name, that you were advising him on Lamont Roach's team, but we knew he was with Golden Boy in the past. There was an association there. Tell Mike why Lamont Roach is one of the best fighters in that division. Because Mike was like, we were talking about different fighters, and Mike wasn't completely sold yet.
100%, and I could see why. Lamont, it's been quiet, too quiet for a couple years now. Obviously, he became mandatory. Hector Garcia requested a special permit to move up in weight. Do you fight Lamont and run the risk of a cut, injury, or loss while you're already mandatory? So months and months and months went by. Obviously, if you're not in the ring, you start becoming irrelevant. Finally gets the world title shot against Hector Garcia. Hector loses to Davis, comes back, gets injured, pulls out of the fight. So his time to shine took longer and longer and longer. And it was very frustrating. And it was sad to see, because here's a kid that's very dedicated, crafty, works hard. I saw how dedicated and how much of a fighter was. Again, it's not building the record. It's taking them tough. I took Lamont to Puerto Rico, and he got a draw in a fight that he clearly won, in a fight where he dropped his opponent. The ref called it a slip. Mistakenly, the ref later said, I blew it there. But again, they're on the dime. It's fast call. They don't see repeats or reviews like we do. And I walked into the dressing room after the fight, and Lamont was devastated for a draw. You would have thought they robbed him. They gave him the loss. But that's just what showed me character. A draw wasn't pretty on the record for him, especially when you won. But I said, look on the bright side. They could have taken it from you. At least it was a draw. So from there on, I took him. It was against the Southpaw. I took him to Cancun, and he blows out the opponent. So I see, you can win on the road. You can do that. So it's a kid that I've been working, a man now that I've been working with since he was a young man, a kid. And I've seen his growth. His potential's there. Reminds me, and I tell his dad all the time, reminds me of a Shane Mosley, because he fights in the pocket beautifully. He works the body beautifully. I don't think we've seen yet his true potential because of inactivity. But the way he broke down Hector Garcia and how he closed the show, if he doesn't drop him in the last round or closes it in the championship rounds, it's a draw. And even in the Jamel Herring fight, he learned a lot. He did lose that fight, but he had Jamel Herring out in the 11th round, out, seconds left, saved by the bell. And he learned from that to not hold back, get going. And we have a big announcement coming up, hopefully soon. And he will be fighting in the summer. He'll be fighting in June, and we'll be announcing soon. And look, the potential's there. He wants to unify titles. He wants the Fosters. He wants the other champions. A fight that I would love personally, and I think it would be a very fan-friendly fight, is Oscar Valdez winning the world title and then unifying, in the unification with Oscar Valdez. Recently, I think his fight was a world title, an interim or something. So, a fight with Oscar Valdez is guaranteed fan-friendly fight. So, expect big things. I'm hoping to get him, that we see him 2 or 3 times this year, even though we're almost midway. Things will be picking up very quick for him.
There you go, Mike. We're going to get him on so he can confront you directly, too. We're gonna.
Anytime you want him on, let me on so we can schedule that and bring him on, because, again, not only a tremendous fighter in the ring, but a great young man outside the ring.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That day.
Yeah.
And we'll go after Cordina. Let's go.
So once again, Robert, we appreciate your time here on the Last Round podcast. Follow Robert Diaz on social media at Michilada Time. And as he said, He provided some contact information a couple minutes ago. So his services, he obviously still involved in the sport. For people who don't know, you're still involved very heavily in the sport with fighters, managers, everybody's in there. And your services are open, whether you just want to ask a question or do some business, you are there. Mike, before we sign off, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
At The Last Round on Instagram and Twitter. Be sure to join us next week. We'll be previewing, as Robert said, the big Canelo-Jaime Munguia fight.
Yeah, definitely another big fight. 2 week or two back-to-back big events, which is always good in the sport of boxing. So for our guest of the week in Roberto Diaz, for my co-host Michael Shepard, I'm Danny Z. This is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.